breaking news that, for whatever reason, is being downplayed or ignored by other media outlets, but we think you ought to know about it. 5 simple words describe it. There was no Russian collusion. There's no evidence whatsoever that the Trump campaign conspired in any way with the government of Vladimir Putin during the last presidential election, period. That's apparently the conclusion of the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee. That committee spent 2 years investigating this question, of course, hundreds of interviews, reams of classified documents, untold millions in taxpayer dollars. No collusion at all. That is what we are hearing tonight they have found. Now, if you've been following this story at all, and of course you have been, you will not be surprised by this. No Russian collusion is a lot like moon landing actually happened, or abominable snowman was probably a long-haired mountain goat. You knew that already because you're not an idiot. But if so, compare your mental acuity to that of prominent political figures here in Washington. Next time you feel dumb, watch this tape.
I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy in plain sight.
Trump has the Kremlin clan surrounding him. There's more to be learned about it. I believe there's been collusion.
It's starting to smell more and more like collusion.
We saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude, possibly, with Russia.
Smells like collusion. Plenty of evidence of collusion. Hard evidence of collusion. In the end, it was all fake. And they knew that. They knew it wasn't real. They were lying from the very first day. Only their remarkable aggression, their willingness to say literally anything, no matter how outrageous or slanderous or vile, kept the rest of us from catching on to what they were doing. If the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is willing to call someone a traitor to this country, there's got to be some truth to it, right? Actually, no, there wasn't. It was always a hoax. Adam Schiff is an unscrupulous charlatan. That's the real lesson here. Don't expect people like Schiff to apologize, though, or correct the record, much less repair the lives of the people they have destroyed. Carter Page still can't find a job. Roger Stone is still facing life in prison. Meanwhile, Schiff's PR team on the other channel continues like none of this ever happened. Here's Malcolm Nance of MSNBC explaining that the results of a 2-year Senate investigation mean nothing. People are guilty because we say they're guilty. We must punish them.
Let me just say one thing. When Benedict Arnold gave the plans to West Point to Major Andre, and they captured Major Andre, they did not have any real information linking those plans to Benedict Arnold, other than the fact that he was in his presence at one point during that day. But everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. So at some point, there is going to be a bridge of data here that is going to be unassailable.
No one had any evidence, but everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. That says it all. Let's repeat that once again slowly so you can write down those words and put them on your fridge as a memento of the terrifying mass hysteria we've all just lived through. Quote, everyone knew it was treason when they caught the man and they hung him. That's our country now. That's what the Russia insanity has done to us. The real government shutdown has lasted for nearly 2.5 years. That's 1% of this country's entire existence. We no longer have meaningful policy debates in Washington. We have investigations instead. Nobody can think clearly. Everybody's afraid. The country's core problems don't even rate as interesting anymore, either to legislators or the TV pundits who comment on legislators. The suicide rate just hit a 50-year high. Did you know that? We're in the middle of the worst drug epidemic in the history of America, including the one after the Civil War and the heroin epidemic of the 70s and the crack epidemic of the 80s. This is way worse. And it's one of the reasons the life expectancy in many parts of the country is dropping. This is starting to look like Boris Yeltsin's Russia. And yet nobody in Washington even notices. All Adam Schiff and the rest of the wild-eyed morons can think about is Vladimir Putin, collusion, our hacked democracy, and all the other mindless slogans they've repeated long enough to half believe. We've spent 2 years perpetuating a fraud, and they are still doing it. What is this? It's negligence on a stunning scale. It has nothing to do with Trump. It has everything to do with running this country, and they're not. Historians will look back on this moment in amazement and in sadness. Who put these crackpots in charge and let them break things? Why didn't any responsible person in the media say anything about it? Why did they collude in the charade? What the hell happened to America? History will judge us for this moment. Adam Schiff's grandkids will be ashamed of what he did. Molly Hemingway is a senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Sorry to get all huffy there. It's just, you have to think that if a story breaks that the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has spent 2 years looking into this, says there's no evidence of collusion, that's got to be front page news, and that's got to spur some sort of soul searching on the part of everyone who's been repeating the lie, but no.
Right. Every day or every couple of days for 2 years, we've had this Russia collusion conspiracy spread and pushed by compliant people in the media. No matter how small an item was, it was pushed as evidence of some grand conspiracy. Then you have the Senate Intel Committee coming out and saying what the House Intel Committee already said. There's no evidence of collusion. There's no evidence of this thing that sidelined an incoming administration, that completely took the Attorney General out of commission until he was finally let go. That, you had just all of this hysteria, and we're not even going to cover it, or we're not going to mention it after pushing this story for several years. It's one thing for Democrats to push this. It's entirely another for people in the media to be so much going along with it. It's also something where we still aren't dealing with the fact that the intel community completely took in this information operation that was bought and paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. And they used this information to spy on a presidential campaign, to punish people for the crime of having not wanted Hillary Clinton elected president, or to put people in prison because they had the wrong political alliances. This is so deeply un-American. We are not supposed to do things this way.
No, we're not supposed to accuse people on the basis of no evidence. And by the way, just to be clear, I'm not talking about Trump. I think there's a higher bar for the president. People say all kinds of reckless things about the president. It's the weaker people who got crushed in this, people like Carter Page. I personally was called a Russian agent by the now chairman of the House Intelligence Committee because I asked a question he didn't like. My question is, because we knew pretty quickly that this was fraudulent, that there really wasn't any evidence at the basis of it, and that people had no interest in finding out the truth, why did so many Republicans play along?
That's another thing. It is one thing, like I said, for Democrats to do something like this. What have Republicans been saying for the last couple of years other than, oh, we just have to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait while the business of government doesn't happen because of this investigation?
Yeah, the one thing we can't do is fire Robert Mueller.
Yes.
Because actually, our constitutional system doesn't really acknowledge democracy. We can have someone who literally can't be fired in the middle of a democratic republic. How does that work? Republicans push that.
Someone who's literally unaccountable, who nothing can be done to, who has all the powers of the CIA and all the powers of the FBI. And Republicans sat there and said, there's nothing we can do about this.
So why would anyone vote for people like that? I mean, seriously. Right? So if you have one side that's perpetuating what is a transparent fraud and causing the wheels of government to grind to a halt, and things like a rising suicide rate to go unacknowledged because no one has the disk space left to think about anything but Russia, if you're playing along with that, why would Republican voters vote for you?
Right. I think it's one of the sad things about the current moment that many people who are in positions of power, who are Republican, fear the media, or they fear their peer group more than they care about upholding rule of law, or they care about having a functioning republic.
Their minds are not free. They spend all day trying to avoid being criticized by people who hate them for reasons that are not even related. And that's literally, they are ruled by their enemies. Their enemies live in their heads and control all of their behavior.
But they have a responsibility to Americans.
You think?
They serve in these positions of power because we expect them to have to take their leadership and their role very seriously. It doesn't sound like they take this seriously, and to not have been asking the important questions about this as things just went crazy for year after year, and then to pretend that what everyone's doing is pretending like they didn't do it. They're all trying to pretend like they didn't push this Russia conspiracy theory as it starts to fall apart.
I think, yeah, I agree. Thank you, Molly. Great to see you. Julian Epstein is a former chief counsel of the House Judiciary Committee, and he joins us tonight. But Julian, in addition to everything I've just been ranting about, and I try not to rant, I'm not a ranter by temperament, but this, I spent the first 3 months trying to take this seriously, okay? And it's not serious, clearly. But we have just completely changed our relationship as a nation with Russia, declared them an enemy, and moved toward war with them on the basis of a story that's fraudulent.
I think that's overstating it, but I am sympathetic to the notion that the problem with our politics is that both sides and the media aligned with both sides tends to get out in front of the facts.
Yeah.
Here. Now, I think collusion is a bad word because collusion is not a legal word. I mean, you and I sitting here, we're colluding for a television show. It doesn't mean anything. The question is conspiracy to violate the criminal laws. There's no question in anybody's mind that the Russians violated criminal laws on election interference, the computer hacks and the illegal foreign expenditures. There's no question that those were criminal violations. The question has always been whether Trump or those around him conspired with the Russians on those two criminal actions. And I've said on this program before, I've said all year, that there's no evidence of that.
But then, so this is what's hard for me. So look, there are always going to be fringes. There are in both parties. You pointed out, and I agree with you. So I'm one of the few people. I'm not always jumping on Maxine Waters because I don't think she's a serious person. Actually, she's an outlier. I think the chairman of the House Intel Committee is. I think the Speaker of the House is. Those are serious leaders of the Democratic Party, and both of them, you just saw the tape we played, accused the president and those around him, his family, of collusion, a non-crime. How irresponsible is that?
So there's a political Rorschach test that's going on here right now. Both sides see it very differently. And what the Republicans see, and I understand why they see it this way, is what I just said. There's no evidence that
Mexicans did.
Where we ought to be, if we want to find common ground, is where we ought to be. And I think the Washington Post had a poll on this today, is that Mueller is, I think, going to do a far more extensive investigation than the House.
Okay, but simple question.
Let's have that report be public.
That's okay. Whatever. Whatever. At this point,
no, but it's not whatever. That's the facts.
No,
but those are the facts.
No, this is a prosecutor's allegations. These are not the facts. A prosecutor comes up with a case which is not proven. It is a case, like the kind that I make every night on this show. They're not the facts. It's a position. I'm just wondering if we can have an apology from the Speaker of the House and the Chairman of the House Intel Committee for saying things that were not true and that divided the country and made people afraid and paranoid on the basis of no evidence.
Well, you have to ask them how they want to respond to that. I think they would probably tell you that I'm not certain that the Democrats and Republicans are going to agree on the Senate intelligence report. I think there will be a dissenting view on the Senate intelligence report for starters. But secondly, I think they will also tell you that Mueller will go far beyond what the Senate Intelligence Committee will find in terms of his investigative ability, his subpoena authority, his ability to go overseas. So I think the Mueller report is going to be a more complete report.
Last question.
And the public, Tucker, wants the report to be public, and we can judge what are facts, what's evidence, what's not.
At this point, 2.5 years in, should Roger Stone spend the rest of his life in prison if we find out there was no Russian collusion? What is the point of all this, of sending Roger Stone for the rest of his life to prison, honestly?
So I think the question on Stone is not just the question of collusion. I think the question is whether he was honest with prosecutors.
Okay.
But Tucker, you railed against the Clintons for obstruction of justice repeatedly because they weren't.
I certainly did.
Because of what you thought they were obfuscating with prosecutors. So you should be consistent here.
I supported Ken Starr's independent counsel investigation, and I'm ashamed that I supported that because it was totally wrong. This independent counsel thing is non-democratic. I should never have supported that.
Well, at least you're trying to be consistent.
Well, I'm trying to be honest.
Yeah.
Julian, thank you.
Okay.
Congress may finally have a deal to end the debate over a border wall. What is in it? Is it enough to satisfy the president? One of the members of Congress who's negotiated it joins us after the break.
Tucker Carlson is brought to you by Alka-Seltzer Plus Power Max.
Past 2 months of arguing about a border wall have not made the country any safer, but they have exposed the real nature of the debate. On the left, the mask is off. Progressives no longer pretend that they want a secure border. Nothing is more American, they tell us, than having no control over who lives in America. Walls are not just expensive, they are evil. Walls are not who we are, they constantly remind us without explaining what that means. Last night, while the president spoke to an event in El Paso, an unemployed, semi-coherent, life-ravaged Beto O'Rourke interrupted his one-man road trip to hold a counter-rally nearby. In between tugs on what may or may not have been a 40-ounce scuba tank of malt liquor, O'Rourke raved that walls are more than just immoral. They're deadly. Walls may look harmless, even charming, but like Ted Bundy, they kill people.
Here, in one of the safest cities in the United States of America, not because of walls, but in spite of walls. We know that walls do not save lives. Walls end lives.
Beto O'Rourke. Next time your church has a warm coat drive, give one for Beto. Well, walls end lives. That's what he said. They're murderers. You'd think that would be the final word on walls. Once you accuse a wall of being a homicidal maniac, what else is there to say? Can you be worse than a murderer? Turns out you can. Not only do walls kill, the media told us this week, but they are hardened racists as well. Every wall is like a cinder block Bull Connor. Watch the mouth breathers of cable television explain.
It's not about some flood of killers and gangsters, the brown menace, as I call what the president is pandering.
To blatantly attempt to stir up fear of people of color, of brown people, as my colleague Chris calls it, the brown menace that he's trying to scare you with.
The wall is kind of a metaphor for Donald Trump's presidency. The foundation of the wall is hate. It's fear.
Yep.
And it becomes fear of the other. And then it becomes fear of brown people. And it becomes fear of caravans and fear of invasion.
We need an IQ test at cable TV. We can't just give these jobs to anybody. Is there like some kind of lottery for these jobs? Anyway, deadly, bigoted, terrifying. That's what the left says it thinks of border walls. And yet, amazingly, as of tonight, Democrats in Congress have agreed to pay for one, sort of, a version of one, really. Congressional negotiators say they are willing to give the president $1.3 billion for a border barrier. That's a quarter of what he asked for. It's slightly less than Democrats offered back in December before the government shutdown. The money could only be used on existing fence concepts along about 50 miles of border. That's not much, admittedly. But given the rhetoric, it's more than you might have expected. What's not in the deal so far? Well, there's no universal E-Verify. That would prevent employers from hiring illegal immigrant labor. There's nothing to deter sanctuary cities or otherwise enhance enforcement of our immigration laws. On the other hand, there's also no amnesty for DACA recipients or anyone else. Democrats are trying to restrict funding for ICE detention beds, but ICE will still exist if this deal is signed. The president said he's disappointed in the terms, but at this point he seems unlikely to veto it. This is not the end of the debate over border security, as long as the Democratic Party says it believes that locking your door at night is an expression of hate and fear. This will continue. Congresswoman Kay Granger will likely be at the center of it. She's a Republican representing Fort Worth, Texas. She helped negotiate this deal. We're glad that she's here tonight to tell us what's in it. Congresswoman, thank you very much. Are you happy with how this turned out?
I'm pleased. I wish we'd gotten more, but I'm glad. We're going to help the president build a wall. It's going to be a good wall, and we went to see that. I just got back from the border about an hour before his State of the Union, and I was so happy to see that he showed that wall and what's going to happen there. We were there for 3 days, went all the way from McAllen, Texas, you know where that was, El Paso, San Diego, California, to see what's happening and where it's safe and where it's not
So
safe.
Democrats are saying this is not a wall, and it would only cover about 55 miles of a border that's thousands of miles long.
Well, they're wrong. It is a wall. In fact, it was a wall. It was 20 years in the making because they tried different ways to make some sort of barrier, and most of them were poorly made, not enough funding, fell down, that sort of thing. But this wall we went right by what the border security needs. You can see through it so they can see, or are there 5 people over there or 500? Do they have guns or rocks or what's happening there? It can't be driven through. You can't cut through it. It's steel filled with concrete. It's a good wall, and it's going to go all those places that are so unsafe right now because people can come across so easily.
If the president determines that this isn't enough funding for the wall that he envisions and promised during his campaign and elects to use a state of emergency in order to fund the rest of it, would you support that?
I would. I would support. One of the reasons I went, I've been to the border many, many times. In 2014 and 2015, when the unaccompanied children come, John Boehner asked me to go and see what was happening and report and make suggestions of what we should do. I went back to see how much it had changed, and the president is right. It is a crisis. The number of people that are coming over, the conditions they're in, it's just, we have to take a very strong stand. So this wasn't as much money as we wanted, but it's a good down payment. There's a lot of wall already, and we'll add to that.
Why wouldn't former Speaker Paul Ryan, since this was the core promise of the president's presidential campaign, have made this a priority during the 2 years Republicans held the House?
I don't know. I can't answer for him. I can answer for me. And part of it is we had to understand that it was the crisis that it is and make it a priority. And so we started this process and passed 6 bills that help secure our country and our border. In what we're going through right now, to pass the bill that we've written, bipartisan, to keep our borders secure, we also have things that the defense can do, that energy and water can do. It covers.
Why not? Many people note that you could reduce the inflow of people here illegally very quickly if you prevented employers from hiring them. So why not make E-Verify universal? Why not punish employers for undercutting American workers with foreign labor?
Well, I guess part of it is some of the workers, they may have come here illegally, but they're good workers. When I came to Congress 20 years ago...
So does that mean it's okay that they stay?
No, but it says, why should you keep them? What we should really do, and we tried to do this 20 years ago, we said, if people want to come into our country and work, they wanted to say, how can you make it where we can come in legally and work, not move here, not have amnesty, but come here and work. We have jobs, we have that no one's filling, and we should have done that early on. It would have made a big difference, because then they make money, they take it back to their families, to the countries they come from.
Congresswoman Kate Granger of Texas, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Democratic lawmakers are opposing deportation even for dangerous criminals. We have astonishing sound from a sitting Democratic senator. That's after the break.
My teeth have always been a very sore.
Fox News uncovering Facebook messages in which a woman made a rape accusation against Virginia's Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. In one of those messages, the woman considers going forward during the 2017 Virginia gubernatorial election, writing this, quote, "Of course, I want to say something. He shouldn't be running for office. I just don't know what I can do." Well, joining us tonight to talk about the mess in Virginia and far more, we are joined by Charlie Hurt, the Washington Times opinion editor, Fox News contributor. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Lou.
And to watch this extraordinary scandal unfold at the top of the state government of Virginia. It gets worse every day, and no one seems to be compelled to deal with the reality, whether that is to withdraw, to somehow find the truth and absolve themselves. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything close to this in state government. Usually they take themselves out one at a time.
Yeah. And to remember that all of this began all about an actual issue, which was when the governor went on the radio and publicly endorsed a law that amounts to basically infanticide, and back then it was, I thought it couldn't get any worse, and then suddenly it was sort of interesting how much the media ignored that important issue, but then as soon as it became all about blackface and all of this other stuff, then the media got very interested. But the thing I got to say that is kind of karma of sorts here is the fact that when you think about the Democratic Party today, and this is true across the country, they play this game of race, they play racial politics everywhere they go, and Virginia is no exception. They play these politics of race at every turn, and we saw the governor just 2 years ago sliming Ed Gillespie as some kind of racist and accusing him of being somehow an inspiration for what happened, that horrible event that happened in Charlottesville. And to see him now on the horns of this dilemma is it's kind of I don't wish it on anybody, and the whole thing makes me very sad, but it couldn't happen to a better guy.
It is, well, he was particularly quick to demand Northam's resignation.
Yeah.
He was very quick also to deny one, then two accusations of sexual assault, even as the women in one form or another came forward. And the Democratic Party, what are they doing? They're not dealing with it. What happened to #MeToo? What happened to Believe Her? All of the hypocrisy that is mounting on the Democratic Party, as you say, they play the race card, the gender card, group and identity politics, and they seem to be crashing under its weight at this moment.
And remember how hard they came down during the Kavanaugh hearings, and people who try to compare these two episodes, there's no comparison. There was no there with Brett Kavanaugh, and everybody stood back and let his accusers, gave them all the airtime they needed, and I thought that was great. But here you have named women who have specific episodes, who can tell you the date, the time, the place, everything, and they're willing to come forward. Remember, in the case of Kavanaugh, the poor woman didn't even want to come forward. She was outed by Dianne Feinstein and the Democrats, who were willing to do anything they could to destroy a good man's reputation.
I should also point out that that's one version of that story that seems to be perhaps more serviceable for the Democrats than potential reality, which is it was something more orchestrated and refined in its predication than we would have ever assumed initially. Let's turn to what we're watching. The president says he's not pleased with the deal. The Democrats obviously intended to insult him, to the American people. They don't give a damn about border security. They care about illegal immigrants. They are the party they give priority to illegal immigrants, while the Republicans, this president certainly gives priority and primacy to, well, America first, Americans first, making America great. There couldn't be a more stark contrast between the two setting up 2020, and I can't believe the Democrats, the radical Dems, are dumb enough to persist in this.
Yeah, no, it's truly incredible. And I thought that what we saw, the rally we saw last night in El Paso, is a perfect example of what we're going to see going forward for the next 2 years. And I think President Trump is in a very, very strong position. And I think that Democrats will live to regret, at least politically speaking, live to regret their childishness and their absolute refusal to do the most basic thing that they're supposed to do as federal lawmakers, which is to secure our border and enforce the laws. These people are making a mockery of equal justice under law.
No, you're right. And they're also the laziest bunch I've ever seen. I mean, this president is working day and night for the American people, and they won't show up to even consider the national interest. It's really quite something. I'm going to.
And I love how these people, they come up and they say, well, the wall is not the most effective use of the money. And it's like, well, what have you been doing for the past 30 years?
Yeah, well, we don't even want to know that, I don't believe. Charlie Hurt, thanks so much.
Lou.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. The Senate Intel Committee with some conclusions. Stay with us. Headlines we're looking at: Senator Elizabeth Warren had the nerve today to make an unannounced visit to a Native American luncheon taking place in Washington, D.C. She couldn't resist, apparently. She didn't address her misleading claims, that's the kindest way to say it, about her Native American heritage, and there didn't seem to be much interest there, too. New emails obtained by Judicial Watch show the corrupt FBI leadership scrambling date Hillary Clinton's legal team just before the 2016 election. The documents detail a conference call with Clinton's attorneys about James Comey's announcement that the FBI was investigating thousands of potentially classified emails on the laptop of Anthony Weiner. Haven't heard that name for a while, have we? And the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee says his committee has not found any collusion, any evidence of collusion at all between the Trump administration, its presidential campaign, and Russia. Senator Richard Burr adds the committee is just about done with the investigation. One would certainly hope so. Joining us tonight, Joe DeGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, founding partner of the DeGenova and Tenzing law firm. Joe, good to see you. Let's start with this extraordinary evidence of the relationship between the FBI, the DOJ, and the Clinton campaign. It's scrambling to do whatever she asked. Your thoughts?
Well, it is more evidence of the corrupt relationship between the Obama FBI and Department of Justice with the Clinton lawyers. You will recall, Lou, that from the very beginning, certainly after James Comey's famous news conference, it was very obvious that the dirty cop, James Comey, and all the dirty cops around him had thrown the fight. They never intended to investigate Hillary Clinton. They did intend to ignore all of her criminal violations of the law. They did intend to give every one of the people surrounding her immunity, no search warrants, no subpoenas, allowed them to destroy evidence. The fact that they bent over backwards to accommodate David Kendall, her main lawyer, to deal with the new emails on the Wiener laptop is not surprising. In fact, it is confirmatory of the totally corrupt operation that was the Obama FBI and Department of Justice. Hillary Clinton was guilty as hell. They knew it, and they decided to give her a pass.
And they did so seeking quid pro quos.
Yes.
It's stunning stuff.
Yes.
We still don't know what those emails looked like on Wiener's laptop. They were incriminating. They were principally, we're told, but no one knows for sure how many of them were between Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin, Wiener's wife at the time. Where do those sit, and what is the likely fate of those emails?
Well, here's the thing, Lou. For all this time since Donald Trump became president, and he has been the subject of this coup d'etat, this outrageous display of illegal conduct by senior FBI and DOJ officials, some of those things have gone uninvestigated. We were told by Attorney General Sessions that he had Mr. Huber looking into the FISA stuff and this and that and everything else. I have absolutely no confidence in Mr. Huber. I don't know who's looking into what. We don't have any evidence that anything of substance other than by Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, who can prosecute no one.
Do you have confidence in him?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something, Lou. I used to, but I don't anymore, and I'll tell you why. His conclusions in the first major report that there was no evidence of bias by the people who made decisions in the case involving Hillary Clinton is fundamentally ludicrous in light of the text messages between Strzok, Page, and everybody else. It's just nonsense. So Bill Barr, the new sheriff in town, has an opportunity to investigate properly, set up some grand juries, and hopefully prosecute some of the people that need to be prosecuted.
And every one of those people seems to be an employee of either the FBI or the Justice Department. We'll see if Mr. Barr has the stomach and the spine for it. Let's pray, because it's been a long time since we had a good person running that department. Joe, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Good to see you, Lou. Thank you.
Joe DeGenova. Appreciate it. Up next, decades of uncontrolled, wild spending in Washington. The national debt, there you are. We've been talking about it for a long time. Well, we just have a historic level for you. It's now above $22 trillion for the first time ever. We take that up and much more right after the break with Moody's.